Good afternoon. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you back to the regularly scheduled meeting with the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. My name is Malia Cohen. Madam Clerk, are we ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the September 18th, 2018 meeting of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Thank you for being here with us today. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll for attendance?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Brown. Brown present. President Cohen.
Here.
Cohen present. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer present. Supervisor Kim. Kim present. Supervisor Mandelman. Mandelman present. Supervisor Peskin.
Present.
Peskin present. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan not present. Supervisor Safai. Safai present. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Yi.
Present.
Yi present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
None to report, Madam President.
None to report. Okay. Please call the consent agenda.
Items 1 through 3 are on consent. These items are considered to be routine unless a member objects. An item may be removed and considered separately.
Madam Clerk, on the question, shall these items be passed? Please call the roll.
On items 1 through 3, Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yi.
Aye.
Yi, aye. Supervisor Brown. Brown, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Mandelman. Mandelman, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. There are 11 ayes.
All right. Thank you. These items pass unanimously. Madam Clerk, let's go to the regular agenda.
Item 4
Yes, please.
is an ordinance to establish sub-project areas G-2, G-3, and G-4 of the City Infrastructure Financing District Number 2, and to affirm the CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
Thank you. Colleagues, can we take this same house, same call? All right. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed. Madam Clerk, please call us the next item.
Item 5 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to permit affordable housing on undeveloped lots in Service Arts Lights Industrial, the SALI zoning districts, to affirm the CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
Thank you. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you for continuing this item while we finalize the amendments. I did want to make a motion to amend this item today, and I believe we distributed copies on page 6. We are simply changing structures to buildings because structures include general advertising signs like billboards, which would prevent the construction of affordable housing, and that was an unintended consequence of our original ordinance. And then I'd like to make a second motion to duplicate the file. And under the duplicated file, I would like to, on page 6, strike out the line as of the effective date of the ordinance enacting section 846.24 and board file number blank. Quote, this has been struck so we can preserve future opportunities to construct 100% affordable housing projects. And the second amendment on the duplicated file is also on page 6, adding on any parcel over 15,000 square feet in size that contains a surface parking lot use, structures that are accessory to a surfing parking lot use, and a building that does not exceed 800 square feet in the building area. Again, just as a reminder, colleagues, this is an ordinance that will allow us to strike a balance between preserving light industrial and art uses in the South Market while also providing additional opportunities for us to build 100% affordable housing. Again, this ordinance permits 100% affordable housing on these SALI lots. And it adds this permitted use on 24 identified parcels that are undeveloped within the SALI district, which under existing law is not permitted. And this applies particularly on parcels that are underdeveloped and contain no existing structures, as well as on surface parking lots that have no existing buildings. And we want to clarify that because structures can include guard stations, kiosks, and even billboard signs. So we want to clarify that within the ordinance.
Supervisor Kim, a question for you. For what reason are you making the request to duplicate the file?
Well, unfortunately, the First Amendment does not require a re-referral to planning, so we're making that amendment here at the Board of Supervisors. The following two amendments do require re-referral to planning. We do want to pass something out of the board, just so there's actually one particular parcel where there is an interest by the Tipping Point Foundation to build 100% affordable housing for formerly homeless individuals. So we do want to pass something out of the board today. However, the second and the third amendment that I've introduced does require re-referral to planning, so by duplicating the file, we can then send that to the Planning Commission.
Thank you for the clarification. So, colleagues, you have heard from our colleague, Supervisor Kim. May I have a motion to amend the original file? A motion made by Supervisor Kim, seconded by Supervisor Sandy Fewer. Without objection, the First Amendment passed. Thank you. Now, colleagues, this ordinance has been duplicated. On the original ordinance, can we take the ordinance same house, same call? All right. Without objection, the item passes first reading as amended. Colleagues, we have a motion to amend the duplicated file. May I have a second on that? Second by Supervisor Peskin. We can take that without objection? All right, without objection. Thank you. And colleagues, I believe these amendments are substantive, and so I need, may I have a motion to send the duplicated file to land use? Motion by Supervisor Peskin, thank you, and seconded by Supervisor Kim. And without objection, this item has been re-referred to committee. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
Item 6 is a resolution to approve the issuance of an approximately $2.6 billion aggregate principal amount of San Francisco International Airport Second Series Revenue Refunding Bonds to refinance bonds and subordinate bonds of the Airport Commission and related obligations, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more continuing covenant agreements in connection with the direct purchase of bonds of the Airport Commission and approving certain related matters as defined herein.
Thank you, colleagues. Can we take the same house, same call? All right, without objection, this resolution is adopted. Madam Clerk, please call items 7 and 8.
Items 7 and 8 are called together. We
Yes.
have here two resolutions that retroactively approve agreements between the Department of Public Health and, for item 7, a fourth amendment to the Behavioral Health Services contract with the Positive Resource Center to extend the term 4 years, July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2022, and an increase to the contract by $7.3 million for a new total not to exceed $18 million. And item 8 is a retroactive approval on an original agreement for behavioral health services for children, youth, and families with Edgewood Center for Children and Families in a not to exceed amount of approximately $24.2 million, a 4-year total contract term through June 30th, 2021.
All right, thank you. Can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, these resolutions are adopted. Madam Clerk, please call items 9 and 10.
Items 9 and 10. Item 9 is a resolution to approve the issuance and sale of $76 million in residential mortgage revenue bonds to provide financing to construct a 143-unit multifamily rental housing project located at 1990 Folsom Street. And item 10 is a resolution that declares the intent of the city to reimburse certain expenditures from proceeds of future bonded indebtedness, authorizes the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development to submit an application and related documents to the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee to permit the issuance of $20 million in residential mortgage revenue bonds for 1045 Cap Street.
All right, thank you, colleagues. Can we take this same house, same call? All right, without objection, these resolutions are adopted. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 11 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to provide that in the Ocean Avenue Neighborhood Commercial Transit District, a health service use, whether principal or accessory, requires a conditional use authorization on the ground story and is permitted above the ground story to affirm the CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
All right, we can take this item, same house, same call. All right, without objection, ordinance passed on first reading. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 12 is an ordinance to amend the police code to require law enforcement officials to provide a verbal warning rather than having to provide a written warning prior to issuing a dispersal order to ensure access to reproductive health care facilities.
All right, colleagues, same house, same call.
Madam Supervisor
Oh,
Ronan.
excuse me, I'm sorry, Supervisor Ronan, didn't see your name.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, this is a rather simple ordinance. What it does is, like elsewhere in the police code, it allows the police to enforce the buffer zone law without first providing a written warning. It pretty much just makes it consistent with other areas of the police code. But it's particularly important right now because, emboldened by this president and increasingly pro-life Supreme Court, the protests outside of Planned Parenthood have become bigger and more aggressive. I've been working on this law for a very, very long time. My predecessor, David Campos, first created a 25-foot buffer zone around reproductive health care clinics, which was overturned effectively by the Supreme Court in a case involving a similar ordinance in Massachusetts. We then amended the ordinance to prevent people from harassing and following women within a buffer zone in front of a reproductive health clinic, and that law remains on the books. But what we're finding is that there's sort of a cat and mouse game that's played between the protesters and the police. The police have to witness the conduct when it's happening, and then they have to look down and write a written warning, and that's making it very difficult to enforce. So this is a very simple fix. It just provides for a verbal warning as opposed to a written warning when enforcing the law, but could actually make a big difference in making sure that women are not harassed when seeking life-saving, oftentimes life-saving healthcare services. So I hope to have your support. Thank you.
Supervisor Ronan, please add my name. Thank you. Supervisor Brown.
Thank you, President Cohen, and thank you, Supervisor Rowan. I just feel like this is a really important to our residents that have safe and obstructive access to reproductive health care. I feel like everyone deserves a welcoming and non-judgmental environment when seeking basic health services. I've experienced it firsthand when bringing a friend to one of these clinics, how aggressive they can be. And it's frightful for anyone going in because they're aggressive. They follow you, almost to the door, and then when you're leaving, they follow you to your car. And it's something that is just a small adjustment in the code, but I think it's going to be really powerful, especially for women to have that kind of access to our healthcare services. So I just want to thank you and my support.
Thank you. Supervisor Fewer.
Yes, I just want to thank Supervisor Ronan for bringing this forward, for these protections for women seeking their constitutional right to personal reproductive health services. Thank you so much, and please add my name.
Supervisor Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. I'd also like to thank Supervisor Ronan for bringing this forward, and please add my name as a co-sponsor as well.
Okay. Supervisor Ronan. Or excuse me, Supervisor Yee.
Can I add my name?
Please do, and Supervisor Brown is also signaling she would like her name added, as is Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Supervisor.
everyone. And Supervisor Mandelman.
All right, looks like we have a full house.
Supervisor Kim?
Would you like to add your name? Okay,
thank
Supervisor Tang would like to add her name as well.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Supervisor Safai would like to add his name as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. This means a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Ronan. Well, colleagues, I think we could take this item, same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is passed on the first reading. All right, Madam Clerk, please call items 13 through 15.
These items are the liquor license items. Item 13 is a resolution to determine that the issuance of an extension on-premise Type 48 on-sale general public premises liquor license to 98 Bottles of Beer on the Wall, Inc., located at 98 Turk Street, will serve the public convenience or necessity of the city. Item 14 is a resolution to determine that the premise-to-premise transfer of a Type 21 off-sale general beer, wine, and distilled spirits liquor license to Giovanni Specialties, LLC, located at 629 Union Street, will serve the public convenience. And item 15 is a resolution to determine that the issuance of a Type 42 on-sale beer and wine public premise license to Lay Brothers doing business as Vig and Thistle, located at 691 14th Street, will serve the public convenience, and requesting that the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control impose conditions on the issuance of all three licenses.
Thank you. Can we take this same house, same call? Without objection, these resolutions are adopted. Madam Clerk, items 16 and 17 together.
These two ordinances amend the administrative code. Item 16 modifies the civic design review fee to a flat fee of approximately $13,000 per project and establishes an annual fee adjustment, a timeline for payment, method for determining fees for projects involving multiple structures as part of a larger development plan, and the circumstances that may qualify for a fee waiver or reduction. And item 17 authorizes the Arts Commission to change a fee for organizing traveling exhibitions.
Thank you. We can take the same House, same call. Let's see. The House hasn't changed. Without objection, this motion is approved. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 18 is a motion to appoint Bryant Dong, residency requirement waived, and Stephen Tennis, terms ending November 2nd, 2019, and Sam Dennison and Jonathan Bonato, terms ending January 31st, 2021, to the Central Market Street and Tenderloin Area Citizens Advisory Committee.
All right, thank you. Seeing that there are no names on the rosters, can we take the same House, same call? Motion approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 19 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require labor peace agreements between employers operating excursion vessels under a port lease and labor organizations seeking to represent their employees.
Seeing that there are no names on the roster, we can take the same House, same call. This ordinance is passed on first reading. Madam Clerk, item 20.
Item 20 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to establish the Early Care and Education for All initiative funded by appropriations from the Babies and Families First Fund, including procedures concerning a spending plan and reporting requirements.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Cohen. Colleagues, in June of this year, San Francisco voters passed Proposition C, the Early Care and Education for All initiative. Prop C was a president-setting voter initiated ballot measure. For decades, families with young children and those in the field of early care and education have been advocating for increased investments for children, families, and their educators that serve them. Starting at the Women's March in January, early educators, family child care providers, center-based providers, parents, and families began collecting signatures of San Francisco voters. In the weeks following, hundreds of volunteers collected and submitted thousands and thousands of signatures. The signatures were verified by the Department of Elections in what became Prop C, the Early Education for All initiative, and it was qualified for the June 2018 ballot. The passage of the Early Education for All initiative is really the largest local investment nationwide. Thousands of children, families, and early educators will be impacted in the first year of implementation. This type of community commitment and investment is what makes San Francisco a family-friendly city. This legislation before you today directs the Office of Early Care and Education to create the initial 5-year spending plan and a process for community engagement in the creation of the plan. After passage of this legislation, the Office of Early Care and Education will submit a report to the board setting the procedures for the development of the plan, which will include the engagement of a broad and diverse range of stakeholders, including parents, providers, educators, academics, philanthropy, nonprofit organizations, and family child care providers. And in 9 months, the Office of ECE will submit to the board a 5-year spending plan for approval. This trailing implementing legislation should be part of the celebration of this truly historic community win. However, there are forces, namely the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and the Building Owners Management Association, BOMA, who have decided to sue the city to overturn what the voters passed in June. This is appalling and, quite frankly, a grotesque example of the wealthiest commercial real estate owners leveraging their power to try to overthrow the will of the San Francisco voters and democracy. For decades, advocates have been sharing their stories, data on the needs and gaps, the depressed wages of our early educators, the challenges and severe shortages of retaining quality early educators, highlighting research about the importance of brain development during the first 5 years of life, and making millions of dollars of requests in our budget. Last year alone, the early care and education community requested more than $300 million in order to begin to address the needs and gaps of San Francisco. The voters of San Francisco recognize the benefits of investing in early care and education and passed this ballot measure. And yet, today, BOMA and others want to silence our residents' votes in the name of profit. Large commercial real estate benefit from the Trump tax breaks, and rather than paying their fair share, they are now suing the city. Instead of seeing this as an opportunity to be a true partner in the community and leveraging the benefits of early education for all, for their tenants and their employees, they are suing to overturn the voters of San Francisco. I will not stand for this hard-fought community victory. As a city, we will fight, and not only to invest in early education, working families, and our educators, but will work to uphold the will of the San Francisco voters. We will not allow the largest commercial landlords to use their money and power to take away your votes. This is why, without hesitation, we're moving forward with the trailing legislation for implementation. I would like to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisors Kim, Ronan, Cohen, and Fuhrer, and the families and the early educators and community for their hard-fought victory. And I also want to thank Erica Mabon, who worked tirelessly on this trailing legislation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion? All right, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? All right, without objection, this ordinance passes on the first reading. Madam Clerk, could you please call items 21 and 22?
Items 21 and 22 are two motions that appoint Supervisor Mandelman to the Association of Bay Area Governments Executive Board, term ending June 30th, 2019 for item 21, and for item 22 to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board of Directors, term ending February 1st, 2021.
All right, Supervisor Peskin has made a motion to excuse Supervisor Mandelman. May I have a second? Second by Supervisor Ronan. Without objection, Supervisor Mandelman is excused. And on these motions, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On items 21 and 22,
Yes.
Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yi.
Aye.
Yi, aye. Supervisor Brown. Brown, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer.
Aye.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. There are 10 ayes.
Thank you. Without objection, these motions are approved. Madam Clerk, please call item 23.
Item 23 is a motion to appoint Supervisor Valley Brown to the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, term ending January 31st, 2019.
All right, may I have a motion to excuse Supervisor Brown, made by Supervisor Yi, seconded by Supervisor Stephanie? Thank you very much. Without objection, Supervisor Brown is excused. On the motion, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
On item 23, Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yi.
Aye.
Yi, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Mandelman. Mandelman, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. There are 10 ayes.
Thank you. Without objection, the motion is approved. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
Committee reports. Items 24 and 25 were considered by the Budget and Finance Committee at a regular meeting on Thursday, September 13th, 2018, and were forwarded as committee reports. Item 24 specifically was recommended as amended with the same title. It's an ordinance to delegate authority to the General Manager of the Public Utilities Commission to enter into agreements for purchase of electricity and related products within certain parameters and, where necessary, to meet legal requirements, and to retroactively authorize 3 agreements for Clean Power SF with Pacific Gas and Electric Company from August 2018 through December 2020, and approximately $13.7 million in total costs for purchase of electricity-related products.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On item 24, Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang. Tang, aye. Supervisor Yi.
Aye.
Yi, aye. Supervisor Brown. Brown, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Mandelman. Mandelman, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Thank you. This item is passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 25 is a resolution to approve and authorize the sale to Alameda County for approximately $2,000 of an easement on city property under the jurisdiction of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, consisting of one approximately 5K square foot road area and one approximately 22 square foot slope area on the above Calaveras Road in Sunol, California, and to adopt the appropriate findings.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, can we take this same house, same call? Thank you. This resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 26 was considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a regular meeting on Monday, September 17th, and was forwarded as a committee report. It is a resolution to approve the Second Amendment to the Agreement for Maintenance of State Highways in San Francisco between the city and the State of California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, to include the city's maintenance of additional facilities on right-of-way within Caltrans jurisdiction, including the city's maintenance and operation of additional electrical equipment on Sloat Boulevard.
All right, thank you. We can take the same house, same call, colleagues? All right, seeing no objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, it's not quite 2:30 yet. Could we go to item 27, excuse me?
Roll call for introduction.
Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Safai. Okay, we'll submit. Supervisor Stephanie.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, I have an in memoriam today for Mercedes Miller, and I would like to close today's meeting in memory of her. Mercedes Montelio Miller, also known as Cedes, passed away on August 29th, surrounded by her family after a beautiful long life. Cedes was a longtime San Franciscan and a lover of the arts. She was born to Carlos and Pilar de Montelu, Baroness de Albi of Barcelona, Spain. She settled in San Francisco around 1952 with her first husband, Alejandro, and raised their two sons, Alex and Juan. Cedes later married her second husband, Paul Miller, and became a loving stepmother to Bob, Chris, Charlie, and Gordon. And in 1988, met her longtime partner, Tendi, and the two remained inseparable until her passing. Cedes spent her life in District 2, particularly in the Pacific Heights neighborhood. She was a deep, avid supporter of our city's arts and artists, especially of our city's opera company. As a celebrated painter herself who practiced well into her 70s, she will forever be remembered and cherished through her exquisite decorative art pieces, antiques, and collectibles. Although San Francisco was her home, a piece of her heart remained in Barcelona. Cedes was a champion throughout the celebrations of San Francisco's new sister city partnership with Barcelona in 2010. Cedes is survived by her partner Tendi, her four siblings, her two sons Alex and Juan, stepchildren, grandchildren, and numerous nieces and nephews. My thoughts and prayers go out to Cedes' family and friends as they celebrate her life tomorrow at the family's parish, St. Dominic's Church. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stephanie. Given it is 2:30 p.m., Madam President, we will return to roll call for introductions, beginning with Supervisor Fewer, but back to you, Madam President.
Thank you. So, colleagues, today we have one special commendation. I'd like to recognize our colleague, Supervisor Fewer. She will be recognizing Mi Young Yoon, who is the board chair of the Korean Council for Justice and Remembrance. Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, I would like to invite Mi Young to the podium, please. Today, I'm honored to recognize a fierce advocate for survivors of sexual violence and someone who has worked to help and empower survivors tell their stories. Mi Young serves as the chair of the board of the Korean Council for Justice and Remembrance for the issues of military sexual slavery by Japan. The Korean Council is an international non-governmental organization that was founded on July 11, 2018, uniting with two other NGOs, the Korean Council for the Women Drafted for the Military Sexual Slavery by Japan, and Foundation for Justice and Remembrance for the Issue of Military Sexual Slavery by Japan. Founded in 1990, the Korean Council was an organization that encouraged survivor Hak Soon Kim to testify in public about her experiences as a Japanese military sex slave for the first time on August 14, 1991. Now we see Hak Soon Kim rendered on the statue in St. Mary's Square as an elderly woman, an effort to honor and remember her and other victims of this war crime. Yoon began working at the Korean Council in 1992 as a staff and director of general affairs. She is recognized as a leader of women's rights and has authored 2 books about Wednesday Rally, a protest supporting comfort women held weekly across the Japanese embassy in Seoul that began in 1992. The Korean Council operates Our Peaceful House, a home for survivors of sexual slavery, and manages the Women in War Museum. They soon plan to establish the War and Women's Rights Research Center this year. The Korean Council also celebrated the opening of Truth and Justice, Remembering Comfort Women, the first multimedia traveling exhibition that share many of the untold stories of victims and survivors, now on display at the Middletown Heritage Foundation. Yang, thank you for your tireless commitment and leadership. It is my pleasure to honor you today.
Thank you.
Welcome. The floor is yours if you'd like to say a few remarks.
If you'd like to say a few remarks, I believe that you have a translator. Thank you.
생명이 존재하는 이 땅 모든 곳에 평화가 있기를 기원하며 인사를 드립니다.
Dear San Francisco Board of Supervisors, I extend the warmest wishes for peace.
저는 일본군 위안부 문제 해결과 전시 성폭력 재발 방지를 위해 지난 30여 년 동안 국제적인 활동을 펼쳐온 정의연의 윤미향 대표입니다.
I'm Mi-hyang Yoon, the chair of the board of the Korean Council for Justice and Remembrance for the Issues of Military Sexual Slavery by Japan, an international non-governmental organization that has been fighting to resolve the issues of Japanese military sexual slavery and to prevent the recurrent sexual violence committed against women during wartime for the past 30 years.
존경하는 샌프란시스코 시의회 의장님과 시의원님, 그리고 평화와 인권을 사랑하는 샌프란시스코 시민 여러분, 제 마음속 깊이 간직해온 감사와 존경의 마음을 꺼내어 이렇게 직접 전할 수 있게 되어 무한한 기쁨으로 생각합니다. 그 기회를 누릴 수 있도록 저를 이 자리에 초청해 주신 의장님과 의원님들께 진심으로 감사드립니다.
Honorable Mayor Breed, San Francisco City Supervisors, and San Franciscans who cherish peace and human rights, with my deepest sincerity, I would like to express my gratitude and respect to all of you. Thank you very much for extending your invite to me.
세계 각지의 일본군 성노예 생존자들과 그들과 함께 활동하고 있는 세계 각지 시민들은 1년 전인 2017년 9월 22일 샌프란시스코시에서 있었던 역사적인 한 사건에 주목했었습니다.
The survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery, known as comfort women, and their supporters all over the world paid close attention to one historical event that took place in San Francisco on September 22nd of last year.
온갖 어려움에도 불구하고 샌프란시스코 시의회 결의를 통해 일본군 성노예 피해자들의 아픈 역사를 기억하고 그 여성들의 인권과 평화를 향한 숭고한 노력을 기리기 위해 기린비가 세워지는 것을 보았습니다.
In spite of numerous obstacles, we witnessed the installation of the memorial, the column of women's strength, in honor and remembrance of Japanese military sex slaves. The memorial honors their noble efforts towards securing human rights and peace and remembers their painful history.
그날 피해자들은 희망을 가졌고 세계 시민들은 어둠이 빛을 덮지 못한다는 것을 확인할 수 있었습니다.
On that day, the victims became more hopeful and were reminded that darkness cannot conceal the light of truth.
우리 미래 세대들은 평화와 인권은 그 무엇과도 바꿀 수 없는 소중한 가치라는 것도 확인할 수 있었을 것입니다.
I'm certain that through this installation, our future generation can learn that peace and human rights are irreplaceable values.
고령의 피해자들은 말합니다. 우리가 바라는 것은 돈이 아닙니다. 일본 정부가 전쟁에서 저지른 일본군 성노예 범죄 사실을 솔직히 인정하고 진심으로 사죄하며 배상하고 올바른 역사 교육을 실시하기를 바라는 것입니다. 그것을 통해 우리 명예가 회복되고 인권 회복이 실현되기를 바라는 것입니다.
Aged survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery say that it's not money that they want. They demand the formal acknowledgement of Japan's war crimes, formal and sincere apology, formal reparations, and accurate education on this history, through which their dignity can be restored and human rights can be actualized.
1990년대 초 한국에서 시작된 일본군 위안부 피해자들의 미투는 지난 30여 년 동안 세계 여성 인권 운동에 큰 흐름을 만들었습니다. 남과 북코리아 피해자들과 중국, 필리핀, 인도네시아, 동티모르, 네덜란드, 그리고 호주, 세계 각지의 피해자들이 함께 연대하며 인권 회복을 위해 노력했습니다. 그 결과 전시 성폭력 문제가 인도에 반하는 범죄라는 국제적인 인식을 갖게 만들었으며 UN 등 국제인권기구에서 전시 성폭력 피해자들의 인권 회복을 위한 국제 기준을 수립하기에 이르렀습니다.
What the survivors began in the early 1990s can be defined as the Me Too movement, which created and established mainstream international women's movement in the past 30 years. Victims from North Korea, South Korea, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, East Timor, and Australia created an alliance and worked together to restore human rights. As a result, they helped build an international understanding that wartime sexual violence constitutes crimes against humanity. Furthermore, international human rights organizations, including the United Nations, established international standards for restoring the human rights of the victims and survivors.
그 희망의 역사의 물줄기를 더욱 확고하게 지켜준 샌프란시스코 시어의 노력과 기린비 건립을 위해 함께 손을 잡았던 시민 여러분들의 영웅적인 활동을 세계는 앞으로 영원히 기억할 것입니다. 우리도 그 노력을 영원히 잊지 않을 것입니다. 감사합니다.
What the survivors and I have learned through these experiences is that the importance of collective effort. Global collaboration opens the door for restoring human rights and for remembering the victims and survivors. The global community will continue to remember the Pan-Asian efforts that your city put together successfully to install the Women's Column of Strength, the victims and survivors in war conflict areas, and the Korean Council will never forget the efforts of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and the San Francisco residents. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
네, 고맙습니다. 작은 선물을 좀 준비를 해왔습니다.
We brought a small, she brought a small replica of the peace statue
Yeah.
as a gift from Korea to each one of you. And they're right up there.
We also have accommodation and some flowers for you. So let's take a photo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Returning back to roll call for introductions, Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. I'll submit.
Thank you. Supervisor Yi.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I'm introducing legislation that has gone through several evolutions to address the growing need of child care options in San Francisco. Licensed family child care homes are licensed by the state of California and allow providers to operate in their own homes. Family child care is one of the more affordable options for families. Additionally, they are high quality and reflect the diversity of the language and cultures of our community. However, as we know, with the volatile housing market, providers are constantly feeling market pressure if they do not own their own homes. We heard heartbreaking stories from family child care providers who operated for decades but were evicted from their homes. Not only were they uprooted from their communities, but they also lost their livelihood. And the families they served were suddenly scrambling to find childcare in this very limited supply of childcare services in San Francisco. Over the past 2 years, we met with providers and city departments to find ways to help create more permanently affordable housing options for these family childcare educators. However, we also wanted to ensure that we were not impacting the long waiting lists of individuals and families waiting for affordable units. I believe we have been able to strike a balance in this legislation. As we all know, commercial vacancies have been eyesores for many of our developments. Our commercial districts are hurting from the blight, and property owners are burdened with empty space that bring in zero rent. We also hear that while childcare is an amenity that many developers would like to see in their buildings, is often unfeasible for a large childcare center to go into commercial spaces because of the high cost of build out and the abundance of codes and space requirements. This legislation will address both of these issues by allowing licensed family childcare homes to be considered an active ground floor usage. It will allow property owners to reduce the amount of commercial space if they create an affordable designated childcare unit in the ground floor. These affordable units would then be offered to individuals, tenants, to operate licensed family childcares. Childcare homes bring so much to the communities they serve in. In order to address the childcare crisis we are in, we have to be innovative and forward-thinking in all fronts. I want to thank the Planning Department, the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, and the Office of Early Care and Education for collaborating on this legislation with us. And President Cohen, if there are no objections, I would also like to share a few remarks after Supervisor Mendelman. The rest I submit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Brown. Submit. Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Submit.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, today I'm calling for a hearing on San Francisco's juvenile justice system and strategies, including juvenile hall and log cabin ranch, as well as community-based alternatives to detention. During my time on the school board, I visited Log Cabin, a residential facility which opened in the 1950s, and I know this facility was used to serve 100 youth at one point and was considered the last option before state prison. San Francisco courts have been at the forefront of juvenile justice, detention, diversion, and evidence-based alternatives to institutionalization. Quite frankly, we are overdue on a discussion about the plans for Log Cabin moving forward. We need a strategy for repurposing Log Cabin Ranch because of its low population over the years, typically holding only a dozen teens at a time. Instead of sending youth to the California Division of Juvenile Justice, could we look at an alternative that better serves young people with community support? Many teens now have to go out of state due to lack of space. We need to have a productive, constructive, community-oriented plan to secure housing for placement and around youth justice. I am also introducing an ordinance to extend the sunset date for the Reentry Council, an important advisory body which I serve on as a representative from the Board of Supervisors. The purpose of the Reentry Council is to coordinate local efforts to support adults exiting San Francisco County Jail, San Francisco Juvenile Justice out-of-home placements, and the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Facilities and the United States Federal Bureau of Prison Facilities. The Council coordinates information sharing, planning, and engagement among all interested private and public stakeholders. What is unique about the Reentry Council is that it brings together a wide array of perspectives on criminal justice, ranging from various law enforcement agencies to community advocates and formerly incarcerated adults. I have learned so much from my time on the Reentry Council and have been inspired to pursue restorative justice policies and criminal justice reforms to make our city both safer and more compassionate. I hope I can count on the support of all my colleagues in extending the life of this collaborative public body that has been central in providing accountability for our criminal justice system and improving the lives of those re-entering society after serving their time. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Kim.
Colleagues, today I'm introducing the Better Street legislation, which amends several sections of the Planning Code, which allows us to move forward with the implementation of the Better Streets Plan through private development projects, governs curb cuts on restricted streets, establishes criteria for the Planning Commission that it will use when deciding if a conditional use authorization should be granted when required for a curb cut, and creating a criteria by which the Commission will use to determine if a new curb cut will be granted or on a restricted street. The ordinance also provides design review and approval for large projects downtown and in the eastern neighborhoods, streamlining, allowing projects to consolidate their hearings at the Planning Commission, and projects that are required to attend a Planning Commission hearing under Sections 309 or 329 and are also required to get a conditional use authorization. The purpose of this legislation, in partnership with the Planning Department, is to ensure that we are constructing and building safer streets and sidewalks by reducing conflicts between vehicles and people walking and biking when we are building new projects in our neighborhoods, providing high-quality urban design in the public row, improving transit operation, safety and comfort, and streamlining approval processes, resulting in more efficient use of city staff time and cost savings for the city and project sponsors. This legislation is being proposed in order to support the city in meeting several of its policy goals, including the Better Streets Policy, Vision Zero, Transit First Policy, and Complete Streets Policy. I just want to thank I want to take a moment to thank the Planning Department, who worked in partnership with SFMTA Public Works, Walk SF, Libel City Bike Coalition, as well as the South Beach, Rincon Hill, Mission Bay Neighborhood Association. I want to, in particular, recognize Alice Rogers, who has been pushing this ordinance for over a year, along with our City Attorney's Office, and we look forward to the dialogue on this ordinance, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Mandelman.
Thank you. Madam President, today I have 3 items. First, I'm introducing legislation to make it easier to open new residential care facilities for seniors and people with disabilities, also known as board and care homes. Over the last 5 years, we've lost 19 such board and care facilities in San Francisco, and with them hundreds of beds. As our population ages and as we redouble our efforts to move the most vulnerable homeless folks off the streets and into care, the loss of these beds represents an urgent challenge. I want to thank my colleague, Supervisor Norman Yee, for his focus on this issue, and I want to thank the mayor for identifying an additional $1 million to commit to stabilizing our remaining board and care facilities in this year's budget. Next year, we anticipate that the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council's Residential Care Task Force will be presenting recommendations for the city to address the need going forward. But meanwhile, I'm offering this ordinance to clear one hurdle to the establishment of more residential care facilities in San Francisco. Specifically, the legislation will eliminate the conditional use requirement for board and care facilities serving 7 or more residents in a number of zoning districts, not including RH1 and RH2. Of course, these zoning changes alone will not be enough. Streamlining the planning approval process won't make a difference if we aren't incentivizing the development of many more board and care homes we need. That will necessitate a significant commitment of new public resources, and I hope, colleagues, that we can make that a top priority in the months and years ahead. I'm proud to introduce this today with Supervisor Yee's co-sponsorship, and I believe he may have some comments as well.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. I really want to thank my colleague, Supervisor Mandelman, for introducing this legislation to remove barriers from residential care facilities to expand in our city. Last December, I sponsored a hearing on residential care facilities for the elderly. And this spring, I created a monthly work group to further develop recommendations on how to retain and expand our what we call our RCFE supply. They will produce policy recommendations hopefully by the end of this year. In the last 6 years, as Supervisor Mandelman mentioned, there has been a nearly 20% decrease in supply of RCFEs in San Francisco. Yet our senior population will reach 30% of the population by 2030. As of June 2017, when compared to neighboring counties, San Francisco had the lowest ratio of RCFE beds for seniors, 29 beds per 1,000 people, 1,000 seniors, that is. I look forward to continuing to collaborate with Supervisor Mendelman and all our stakeholders on this urgent issue to make sure we do everything we can to just support this type of critical housing for the city's most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. And back to you, Supervisor Mandelman.
Thank you. Next up, today, along with Mayor Breed and President Cohen, I'm introducing an ordinance that will amend the police code by making a number of changes in the way the city regulates retail cannabis. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues for the painstaking process that this body underwent last year to create a regulatory framework for the brand new retail cannabis industry. Following that process, there was wide acknowledgement that this dynamic industry would be constantly changing, and the city made a commitment to regularly revisit our cannabis policies moving forward. The ordinance we're introducing today is a manifestation of that commitment. This industry is in its infancy, and in the years to come will be a significant creator of new good jobs and local economic activity. The way our city regulates the retail cannabis industry needs to be as innovative as the industry itself, and what we're introducing is a step in that direction, a series of proactive policy solutions that will allow the retail cannabis industry to continue to grow in a way that is sustainable for operators as well as the city. Among other things, this ordinance will enable medical cannabis operators waiting for their retail permits to thrive by allowing the existing industry to continue to operate on medical cannabis permits and temporary permits through the end of next year, while the Office of Cannabis continues to process the 240-plus permit applications from both equity applicants and existing businesses that have been submitted to the office since mid-May. Additionally, this ordinance will strengthen equity ownership in a way that honors the intent of the program to help those impacted by the war on drugs own and operate successful businesses. It will also allow for more flexibility around permit applications for existing operators who are getting priced out of their leases or dealing with predatory landlords. This is just a starting point for this round of regulation, and I look forward to my colleagues' input and public input on this legislation in the coming weeks. As was the case last fall, this legislation will sit for a full 30 days so that the mayor and the board and the Office of Cannabis can solicit comments that we can consider prior to and when acting on this legislation in October and November. I want to take a moment to thank Nicole Elliott, the director of the Office of Cannabis, for her work in putting this ordinance together. My office looks forward to working with her and with all of you to ensure successful passage of this important legislation. And finally, I am also today requesting a hearing on the Re-Envision the Jail Working Group Project's annual report. I want to thank Mayor Breed and Supervisor Kim for their commitment to finding alternatives to incarceration in the proposed jail, and I also want to thank Sheriff Hennessy for her continued participation in this conversation. Lots of great work has been done, but there's clearly more to do, and I think it's time for a hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, as the retail environment throughout San Francisco, and actually for that matter, urban America, continues to challenge us in the northeast corner of the city, Union Square, our decades destination retail zone, has not been untouched by this phenomenon. And while the retail environment there remains really quite healthy in this historic downtown core, the city and the Union Square Business Improvement District have observed a changing preference for a more experiential retail in this area, as evidenced by the Apple Store and some of the other businesses that we're seeing, as well as a preference for smaller floor plans than the traditional department store a la Macy's. And over the past few years, after a slew of proposals to convert retail to office, the planning department staff, as well as staff from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development and the Planning Commission, where 2 hearings have been held, have come up with a proposal together with my office with regard to the proposed conversions of retail space in the Union Square area to office. And as we know from our work on Central Soma, as well as in other contexts, office spaces in high demand and frankly outcompetes retail in many instances and threatens those spaces that are currently occupied by traditional retailers, as well as less traditional retail uses like tailors, design professionals, life sciences. So today I'm introducing legislation that would protect the lower floors in the Union Square area, the C3R zoning district, which are overwhelmingly retail spaces with actually quite a low vacancy rate from office space encroachment, and which would permit and actually make certain office space uses as of right on higher floors. All of this subject to a modest impact fee that will be used for various capital infrastructure improvements in the area, like Holiday Plaza, the Powell Street Promenade, and various alleyway public realm improvements in and around Union Square. I want to thank my staff, Lee Hepner, Planning Department staff, OEWD staff, as well as the Union Square BID for their collaboration on this item. Obviously, this will be referred to the Planning Commission for a hearing and then come back to the Board of Supervisors for deliberation and hopefully adoption that will replace our interim controls that we adopted in May, and the rest I will submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Ronan. Submit. Madam President, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, let's go to item 28, public comment.
At this time, the public may now address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board. Public comment is not allowed when an item has been previously subject to public comment at a Board committee. Pursuant to the Board's rules of order, please direct your remarks to the Board as a whole, not to individual supervisors and not to the audience. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify. And if you would like to display a document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG OVTV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you. Public comment is open. Welcome.
My personal opinion, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors is a barf bag full of its own hypocrisy. The failed fairness in election scheme of 2018 featured a speech by the princess of San Francisco's white privilege. 4 of the 5 co-conspirators to oust the black mayor were white. But what is so fair about 4 white politicians conspiring to oust one black politician by blaming her ouster on a white billionaire? These co-conspirators selected San Francisco's prince of white privilege as her replacement. But the San Francisco Ethics Commission said of this prince, he lacked integrity. After the commission settled with him $25,000 fine on the $190,000 he stole. What is so fair about replacing a black woman mayor who was twice elected board president by her peers with a man who lacks integrity for 1 day, let alone 5 months? With all due respect to the current board president, further evidence suggests this board continues to run San Francisco based on white privilege, and it makes me want to throw up.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I've already made it very clear that I want the city to conduct an investigation on the Catholic churches pertaining to females and males that's being sexually assaulted and raped by pedophiles within the dialysis of the Catholic Church. Now they're on the run. SF viewer, please. Here's one rapist right here who's trying to retire and avoid prosecution. I submit to you that the demonstration pertaining to the rape kits where I explained there's this law that's called continual injury, and these police departments, police organizations, district attorneys throughout California explaining that they can't do anything because the statute of limitations has run out. I moved to correct them. Okay, these 4 females that were raped, sexually abused throughout their lives as little kids by the dialysis there, and by the same response had to suffer the pain and suffering of going through life, and the youngest sister was 2 years old when it started, okay? 2 years old when she was first sexually abused. Her sister was sexually abused in the 1980s, and then by the same response, all of them were abused on the premises of the church, and one was 10, and the other was in the 1st grade. Here's pictures of these rapists who are still at large. There's another one that's still at large. I moved to incorporate the fact that any of you who have been raped in the system here in San Francisco to call this hotline, whether you're male or female, and report that you've been sexually harassed and raped by these Catholic churches here in the jurisdiction of San Francisco. And at the present time, these documents here, these pictures that I'm putting before you is rape.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do you take donations? Do you accept?
Next speaker, please.
Oh, yeah, I'm okay.
Hang around. Don't leave. Okay. He's going to go first. I want to talk with you. Can I talk?
Next speaker, please. Mr. Gilberti, welcome.
Sorry for the delay. The overhead, please. Tom Gilberti. We've done this a couple of times before. We'll do it again. Let's see if we can get a good spin on this. There's as good as we're going to do. That's our weather. For 10,000 years, it's kind of been normal, and now we're going into the wobbles. The civilization, and you see what happens. And that's our climate right now. The wobbles just get bigger and bigger. And I would love for somebody to ask the Supreme Court nominee what he thinks of global climate change. Judy Woodruff, November 6, 2013, said on the NewsHour, on the briefs, global climate, carbon in the atmosphere 393, the stock market just went up to a new record level. I think it was 20,000. So what's that? The thermometer of our health, of our country, of our world is not the stock market. We have to get away from that. Right here in San Francisco, better planning. We've got 4th Street, the 1200 block of 4th Street is falling into away from the buildings, is sinking. We've got the Millennium Tower that may shed a glass. What's going to happen in an earthquake with all of those panels on all of those different windows? It'll be a flock of glass flying down. Our high-rise buildings are not designed to be functional after an earthquake. They are designed to stay and not fall down. This is not.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Next speaker, please.
You know, Mr. Reich Taylor, I guess, number 56, just gave us a speech. I mentioned to him a guy Alex Jones interviews all the time, leozagami.com, and on Rush Limbaugh's show, I forgot the substitute's name. He had a caller in about these 301 priests that have been getting in trouble for what they're doing there to the kids in Pennsylvania. And This is amazing what God is doing. I thank God for President Trump, man. And this is the mercy of God. And when Dianne Feinstein is trying to pull this 11th hour thing about Kavanaugh, what a joke, man. The guy has 65 women saying, hey, he's a great guy. It's a lie. It's so obvious it's a lie. If Feinstein, if I ever see that woman, man, I'm going to try and get her saved. And that's what I'm going to try and do. Well, if you were to now ask me, why am I a Christian? You know, there's a verse in Peter. It says, if somebody asks you why you're a Christian, tell them why. And but with gentleness. And so I'm going to try and do that. I try to, you know, there's a verse in the Bible that says, thou shalt not revile the gods. And, you know, so I'm between a rock and a hard place because really, according to God, you're here by the appointment of God. And it's that's what God says. So I have to show proper respect, even though, you know, Hillary here, you know, talks about a guy wearing a dress, right? And or a woman's attire and calls him her. You know, I have to remember that, you know, even though she's lying because there's only male and female, I have to remember proper respect, okay?
I'm going to pause your time, sir. You have 14 seconds left. Address the board as a whole. Do not call out individual members of the board. Address the board as a whole.
Okay, as a whole.
I'm resuming your time.
Thank you. Okay, but it all comes down to this, man. Jesus is the judge. He raised from the dead, and he said, if you don't honor me, you don't honor the Father that sent me.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board during general public comment? Madam President.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. It looks like we're almost to the end of our agenda. I'd like to, Madam Clerk, if we could go to the in memoriams at this point.
Thank you, Madam President. Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following two beloved individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Stephanie, for the late Miss Mercedes Montaleo Miller, and on behalf of Supervisor Peskin, for the late Mr. Art Peterson.
Madam Clerk, I just want to recognize our friends at SFGov TV, Maya Hernandez and Kalina Mendoza, for assisting us with today's broadcast. If there's no further business before us today, I think we can adjourn.
That concludes our business for today.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are adjourned.